When you're autistic, you're constantly reminded by other people how much you lack people's skills. And I found this out early on because when I was still a teenager, I started to work in retail sales, and that career spanned for 20 years. People recommended books, and one of the ones I was recommended was called How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. And today, that's what we're going to talk about, one of the chapters from that book. I've already covered them in other episodes of this podcast, but this will be part 5. Part 2, chapter 2 is what I'm going to be referring to today. If you have watched the other episodes, you'll notice that I referred to each of these skills as something that we as autistic people can learn. That is what I've found that neurotypical people tend to not do. But that's not going to be the case with this particular skill. I'll call it a skill because to us, that's what it really is. And full disclosure, I'll say when I read this in the book, it was something that I was fairly familiar with already because I'd been masking my whole life. And of course, when I read this book, I did not know I was autistic. But I'd learned to do this particular skill because I was trying to hide who I am. And this might make you think, maybe I don't want to do this because if masking is hiding who you are, do you really want to do it? Short answer, normally I would say no, don't do things that hide who you are. But I believe this particular skill, if done correctly, can serve a purpose. And quite simply, I think that it makes other people feel comfortable. And it's a way of sending a message to other people. So what am I talking about? Why am I dancing around and not getting to the point? Well, actually what it is smiling. Yep, that's what I'm talking about. And believe me when I say I am fully aware that this will be complicated for many autistic people watching this. So I'm acutely aware that saying smile, for us, not so straightforward. In fact, you may have to sit in a mirror and smile and practice and see what it looks like. Yep, you'll feel like an idiot. I've done it. I think we've all done this. We've all pulled faces and looked in the mirror to see what's it look like and how's this come across to other people. And we kind of have to because I don't know about you, but often I think I'm smiling and then I look in the mirror and it's hardly a smile at all. So that's part of the reason is to give yourself a gauge for really what you're doing, but also to get comfortable with this is probably feel awkward. And so that's what it is. That's what the skill is. I'm going to talk about the reasons that Dale Carnegie goes into to sort of explain why it is so important. And of course, we're assuming you're not in sales or anything. This is just generally interacting with other people. And then Dale makes the following statement. The expression a person wears on their face is more important than the clothes on one's back. And I guess you can say here that actions speak louder than words. And a smile says, I like you, I'm glad to see you. And you think about that, that's exactly what we're trying to convey when we do it. And then he tells this story, which was told from a perspective of this veterinarian, and he had a waiting room with all these people waiting to have their pets vaccinated and waiting in line and everything. And everyone was sitting there on a typical spring day, not saying anything. And then all of a sudden, this woman came in with a baby and a kitten to be vaccinated. And she sat next to this guy who looked like he didn't want to be there, displeased about the wait. And then the baby smiled at him. And then he smiled back. And then next thing, a conversation happened. And then 10 minutes later, the whole waiting room is all erupted and everyone's now talking. Now, you might have some judgments about smiling, but that story really illustrates that one person, a baby who really doesn't know any better, just comes in and smiles, and then next thing, everyone's getting along, and the whole mood of the room changed. Then there's this Professor James V. McConnell, who's a psychologist from back in the day, and he makes this claim that people who smile tend to manage, teach, and sell more effectively. There's a lot of information in a smile. And then there was a quote from this employment manager of a large New York department store who said this to Dale Carnegie, that she'd rather hire a sales clerk who had not finished grade school. That must be an American thing. I don't know what that is. Do they mean primary school? Who knows? I don't know. I'm from Australia. If they have a pleasant smile, than to hire a doctor of philosophy with a somber face, or a sad face if you like. Another interesting thing, if you've worked in sales, you'll know this, but this little known fact that smiling while you're on the phone, where the person on the other end cannot see you, can tell that you're smiling. I think it's a really interesting thing to think about, because you might be led to believe that, you know, I'm on the phone, they can't see me, it doesn't matter what face I'm pulling, but it kind of comes across on the other end. And then he tells this story to illustrate this point. And this is one of his students, one of Dale Carnegie's students named Robert Cryer. He's a manager of a computer department store in Ohio. And he successfully hired someone for a really hard to fill position. He was trying to recruit a PhD in computer science and found this young man with ideal qualifications. And after several phone conversations, he found this young bloke already had several offers from other companies, not just interviews, he'd had offers already. And many of them were larger and better known than this guy, than Robert. But this young bloke accepted Robert's offer. And then after he'd accepted the job, and I think it must have been his first day, Robert asked why he had chosen him over the other bigger stores. And his answer was, I think it was because the managers in the other places spoke in a cold, business-like manner, which made me feel like just another business transaction. Your voice sounded as if you were glad to hear from me and that you wanted me to be a part of your organisation. And a lot of that, apart from sincerity, was the smiling on the phone. Again, you think, is it that big a deal? Yeah. It really is. Think about when you've been on the phone to someone. Have you ever spoke to someone on the phone and thought, gee, they sound grumpy, they're unhelpful? But if you've watched any of the other episodes, you'll hear sincerity and genuine and that come up a lot. With the smile, truly believe this is one you can fake it until you make it. You don't have to smile because you're in a good mood. You don't. And then Dale started to get his students to implement this in their lives. And one of them was William B. Steinhardt. He was a New York stockbroker. And he said, this case isn't isolated. He's been married for 18 years and he seldom smiled at his wife in the morning. He was apparently a bit of a grouch, according to William himself. And so he decided for 1 week what he was going to do. He was going to smile and greet his wife in a friendly manner in the morning. And so all he did was say good morning and smiled. And he said he not only got a result, she was really shocked. And now he smiles at everyone he comes across. The elevator operator, sign of the times, they had people operating elevators, sales clerks, anyone he came across. And he found that people started smiling back, like the example of the baby earlier. Again, I realise this is kind of masking a little bit, but if it's making people comfortable, actually, they're a little bit less likely to give us a hard time. They're a little bit less likely to think that we're weird, because that's another thing I've talked about in other videos, that when we are different to neurotypical people, whether we like it or not. And I think this is a simple way, without selling your soul, to just try to make them a little bit more comfortable. And just in case you have the thought that I often have in cases like this, and this comes from Eckhart Tolle says this, that what you think you're lacking is what you're holding back from the world. Because if you're thinking, well, I'm not going to smile unless everyone smiles at me first, nobody's going to smile at each other. We have to be the first one to do it. And like I was saying about the fake it till you make it, if you don't feel like smiling, do it anyway. You won't die. Nothing bad will happen, I assure you. Now, if you do happen to listen to the audiobook or read the chapter of this book, towards the end, it sort of starts to go a little bit towards the toxic positivity. which was just a sign of the time. They didn't know any differently. An example of that is the quote, most folks are about as happy as they make up their minds to be. Don't know about you, I'm sick of people telling me that not be sad, not be depressed, and just decide. And that's all there is to it. It's called toxic positivity for a reason. And the reason I'm bringing it up is if you hear it, don't think, oh, this is true. It's not true. But also outside of this, if somebody tries you, chin up, cheer up, just get over it, all that kind of stuff, that really, please don't listen to them. And the other thing that they talk about is these boys in a home that are crippled permanently for life and how they're all happy and all that sort of stuff. And we should be the same. We've still got both of our legs, all that kind of thing. But that actually got addressed not that many years later by Viktor Frankl, who wrote Man's Search for Meaning. And I've always found that really invalidating when someone compares our suffering to theirs or someone else who's got it way worse off. It's not helpful. And he addressed that really well in his book with the following analogy. Viktor Frankl describes suffering as like a gas. It fills the container no matter the size. So just keep that in mind next time someone tries to tell you that you shouldn't be suffering or someone else has got it worse, so you should just move on. It really does not work that way, I promise you. And finally, at the end, he has a quote, which is apparently a Chinese proverb. A man without a smiling face must not open a shop. Well, I've got to say, I do agree with that, because none of us like that. You don't like walking into a shop where someone's just really stoic and doesn't smile at you or even acknowledge your existence. And even in Finland, like that's where I live, they are known for being stoic, but a lot of the younger people who have been trained up to work in customer service and everything are noticing that they are making an effort. It's really interesting to see, because in Australia, we're all known for being friendly and everything. But in Finland, they're known for being kind. There is a bit of a difference there. But the difference is, though, if you're from Australia, where you think that when people don't smile and go, oh, how are you? Welcome to our country, which is what we do in Australia, you can be led to believe something's wrong. But to see these stoic people, who are great people, if it's not very clear, they're really good people, are making an effort, and they're starting to smile to make other people feel comfortable, even in this country, I think that says a lot.